Good evening. Welcome to the September 12th meeting of the Lawrence Alliance for Education. Just will say very quickly that excited and honored to begin our first meeting with our new superintendent, Cynthia Paris. At this time, I'd ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we're going to recess from the regular meeting and move into executive session to discuss collective bargaining contract. Could I get a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're in executive session. Thank you. At this time, we are reconvening the regular meeting, and we have adjourned. At this time, I would take a motion to approve the contract settlement agreement between Lawrence Public Schools and UFCW Local 1445, representing the licensed practical nurses and others. So could I have a motion to approve that contract?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the contract?
Aye.
Aye.
The matter passes. Let me just ask, do folks at LPS want a roll call vote for this? Yep. So could I ask the clerk to call the roll for those voting on the contract agreement with UFCW Local 1445?
Yes.
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 Custodia Laura?
Yes.
Yes. Can I also ask just the clerk to call all members, just so we document it appropriately, as much as they may want to kill me for doing that? Could you call all members, including those not present? Yep. Okay. I'll allow the clerk to confirm, but I have the contract passing by a vote of 5-0 with 2 members not present. Great. Just want to quickly acknowledge the superintendent and her team for successfully negotiating this contract, as well as Tammy Lefebvre and Doreen Fritchie, who negotiated the contract on behalf of UFCW. We thank all those involved for their good work on that. Great. At this time, we're going to resume the regular meeting agenda, and I will open the meeting for public comment. Do we have a list of people signed in for public comment, which is right in front of me? Mr. Mali?
Omayun Mali, 53 Chester Street. Good evening, honorable members. With the warmest welcome from our citizen to Lawrence Public School new superintendent, Honorable Cynthia Paris. Welcome. Welcome, Her Honor, to the best city of immigrant and the best example of respect for the union. History of Lawrence Public School from the last glorious and triumphant years of leadership of Honorable Commissioner Raleigh and turnaround plan shows that the failure in the past, the most important reason for success of Lawrence Public School has been to have an excellent relationship with our teachers and their union, listen to the parent and the children. We need to face 3 issues in order to have successful public school. English barrier. We need help parents to learn and to be the best help and partner with our teachers and public school. We need to overcome cultural barrier. We need to improve parental involvement. We demand of honorable new superintendent of Lawrence Public School in the first year, please go to different schools, talk to our parents. Please encourage the principals of all schools be effective problem solvers so as to help our parents. We demand of you as our elected official, support our teachers and their union. City of the Lawrence has been going through a big problem in the past. Now we need to move forward. Let's unite and support our teachers and the union. Thank you.
Thank you. John Wynn.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. I'd like to start off by saying that I'm with Microsoft, and the reason why I'm here today is I'm the Microsoft Learning Consultant for the New England area. And before I dive into a little bit of that, I'd like to share with you that I wasn't always with Microsoft. I have been a career educator. I've been in education for over 15 years as a 6th through 8th grade science teacher. I was an instructional coach, an assistant principal, and a principal in Texas as well. And when my wife and I moved here, I did some nonprofit work, and now I'm working with Microsoft. And the reason why I'm here before you today is I'm really passionate about education. When I first came to the US, I was an ELL student, and I can tell you I spent the first couple of my years learning English through Sesame Street. And you know, one of the things I love about Microsoft is its passion for accessibility to technology and learning for all kids. And I know you guys have purchased Microsoft licensing, and what I'm here to offer you is that I do free trainings. I do free trainings to help accessibility for students. You guys have a lot of that already. Kids with visual needs, kids with learning needs, especially our students who are struggling readers, our students who are struggling with comprehension in reading. We have tools for that. We also have tools for math. You also didn't know probably that part of your licensing includes STEM education. You know, a lot of kids play Minecraft. Do you know that one part of your license is coding for Minecraft? So students can learn how to code that directly impacts the game that they love. So all these things I offer you today, and I'm here just as an introduction, so you might have not known about me, but I offer free trainings for not only your district, but all districts throughout New England. So thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Last call, anyone who wishes to offer public comment who's not signed up? Great. We'll just quickly want to note just a few housekeeping items. Number one, I just want to mention that Jess Anders and Mayor Rivera are not here tonight because Lawrence Community Works is receiving a national award for their good work in the Lawrence community, and they're receiving that award at the time that our meeting is scheduled, so we understand their absence, and it's a great night for Lawrence Community Works, and Mayor Rivera wanted to be there with them to celebrate their great work. So I just want to note that that is why the mayor and Jess are not here tonight. I also just want to note that we have been joined by Carla Bear. If you can wave, Carla. Carla is the former superintendent of the Lowell Public Schools and now retired, but we are fortunate that Carla is helps to run the new superintendent induction program, which our new superintendent is part of, and Carla is working in a mentoring and coaching role with Superintendent Paris, and so we just want to thank Ms. Bear for attending tonight, and I'm sure the superintendent may want to offer some words as well in her report. Are there any elected officials here that I'm not seeing any? I would recognize you. If I've committed a massive blunder, please stand up and be acknowledged as you should be. Okay. All right. So with that, I am going to move on to the superintendent's report unless there are any board members who have any comments they wish to make at this time. Great. So without further ado, I turn it over to Superintendent Paris for her report.
Wonderful. So I'd like to share with you what's been happening in the district for the past few weeks. We've had a wonderful school opening, and I wanted to share some of the highlights. Last Friday, for example, the Lawrence Rotary Club celebrated the Rising Stars and Teachers of the Year, and there were 23 nominees, and the following teachers received awards. There's some names here that I'm not going to pronounce well, so I'm going to do my best here. Where is, well, Anne-Marie might help. All right, here we go. So Rising Star in the elementary level, Jessica K. from Partham. How do I pronounce her last name? Thank you. Rising Star from the middle and high school, Christy Cartwright from International High School. Teacher of the Year for elementary, Bridget Haggerty from Partham Elementary. Teacher of the Year from middle and high school, James Coyne, thank you, from Bruce School. So congratulations to all of our Lawrence Public School teachers and Rising Stars of the Year. It was a wonderful celebration, and I have to say that there were performances from our students that were, that moved me. It was a wonderful celebration. We'll be sure to invite all of our board members next year, and of course, we'll make a notice of that to you all as well. The other thing I wanted to share is that we have Lawrence High School summer graduation, and one message you'll find being consistently delivered in our good schools and classroom is that not giving up just because things don't go exactly according to plan. We've had a great example late last month of the Performing Arts Center. Thanks to their own hard work and their support of their teachers throughout the summer school, 78 more students joined the class of 2018. Yeah. And last, for family and community engagement, Lawrence Learns Block Party. This is a collective effort between Lawrence Public Schools and more than a dozen community organizations that support and celebrate successful transitions into our preschool and our kindergarten programs. So in August, we held our third annual Lawrence Learns Block Party, and this event provides a warm welcome to hundreds of families and students, in addition to providing each new pre-K and kindergarten student with a free t-shirt, a new backpack filled with supplies and goodies, and families have the opportunity to meet educators from their schools and play readiness games with their kids and access community resources, and they even enjoy a free barbecue. So we are always looking for opportunities to engage our families, especially our new families, and this was a wonderful event that we hosted.
Great. Yeah. We thank the superintendent for that report, and at this time we're going to have item number 7 on the agenda, the fiscal update, and I would ask Christine Bufagna to come up for that. And I don't know, Superintendent, if you want to offer any introductory words on that.
So it is,
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like for the, on behalf of the LAE Board, to send a letter of congratulations to all the teachers and principals that were honored.
that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silvera.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Christine is going to brief us on a fiscal update. Our commitment is to ensure that we keep the committee and our community well informed of our fiscal health. And so tonight, Christine is going to brief us on that. You will hear from her several times throughout this year before the spring, where we have our full budget hearings, discussions, and votes.
Good evening. So I think you were given the report. The first page is a summary of expenses for the first quarter of the fiscal year. It breaks down salaries and non-salary expenditures. And then we've also given you a highlight of the two other large categories in the school department is transportation and out-of-district sped tuitions. We also gave you a link on that page to the DESI chart of accounts, because the definitions might be a little not clear about what's rolled up into those categories. So the link was to go to the DESI website if you needed clarification on any of the DESI function codes. The second page of the report is more information that kind of gave you how we report to the state by category. The categories of teachers, salaries, employee benefits, transportations, and this is what you voted on for the budget that was loaded into Munis as our financial management system, and it was appropriated by the mayor's office. So this is the year-to-date report. It's what's been spent to date with encumbrances. And as you'll see, there's no encumbrances yet for salaries because our hiring is not yet complete, so that'll probably be in October. So you'll see some more encumbrances for all the salaries in the district. And then you'll see the balances and the percent of the budget used. The last column is the fiscal 8 actual, so you can kind of have a gauge of what we spent last year by category and where we are up to date for this first quarter. Again, if you need any clarifications by those categories, I would really recommend that you look to the DESI website for more clarifications about what is included in each category. But this is how we have to report on the end-of-year report to the state. Any questions or?
For questions from board members?
Quick question. So, but the last F-18 actual, that's projected?
No, that's actuals. That's what happened as of June 30th
Okay.
for 18. We are now in fiscal 19.
Oh, I see, 18, got it.
Right.
And can you just talk a little bit about the nature of, I know it was approved for 19, and then there's several transfers, obviously, that have happened, but could you maybe just explain a little bit of the nature of some of those transfers?
So principals have the discretion between the lines of their accounts to move money. So they did their budgets and say they budgeted a certain amount into textbooks. And then they might have gotten different pricing, and so they want to move it into like an operating account to buy more notebooks or pencils or whatever. So they have the discretion to request a transfer. It comes to my office. We process the transfer with City Hall. So you'll see throughout the year the transfer lines will shift. Also, what's included in that line is if at the end of last fiscal year they had any purchase orders that the bills hadn't come in yet, that will also be like a carry forward encumbrance.
I'll add, Ventura, that fiscal autonomy, budget autonomy for the schools will see this line move a lot because principals have that flexibility, which is one of the things that they really appreciate about autonomies.
I do have a question. When they do the transfer, is it only within the operational budget, or can you do transfer from operational to staff?
We don't really allow for salary transfers because particularly now the salary's unencumbered, but because those salaries are set, there's no discretion because as we all know, people could come and go during the year, and we might have to hire higher or lower, so we need to make sure that if there's any variance in that line, that it stays.
Okay.
So we just allow it for the non-salary lines.
Okay.
Their textbooks are operating.
Other questions? Christine, I appreciate the report, and I follow absolutely that this is how you report to the state and have the chart of accounts established. I'm wondering if internally there's any tracking relative to central office expenses versus school specific, and a breakdown of sort of when we look at the whole pie, how much of this goes to individual school spending versus administrative spending in the central office?
So usually the top pot is the central office pot. Budget and finance, human resources, legal services, those are the administrative offices. information systems, academic leadership, those are all basically held at central office. We have some departments that are more student support based for SPED and ELL, and those would be more into the academic leadership line.
Great. Other questions? And I just want to just note for the record and ask Superintendent Paris to comment if she wishes, but we will, as a board, be getting regular updates on the fiscal picture from your team.
That's right. So you'll see Christine with us quite a bit this year, at least quarterly, if all goes as projected. And of course, during the spring, we'll see her repeatedly, I would say,
Yes,
until
more to
we
come.
have full discussion about the budget and hearings and finally a vote. Yes.
Great.
One more question. I think you explained this, so I need a little reteaching. I think you did this in the spring, but in terms of school-based budgets, are they built on like a specific per pupil amount, or is it weighted? Like, how does that work?
We don't do per pupil allocations here, but what we do is we meet with every principal, every department head, and we sit in a room and we call it like the budget team, and we go classroom by classroom. We talk about everyone in the building, and we have a projection about where they are on this career ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the decisions are made with their leadership team, so there is union involvement in that about what the priorities are for that school, what curriculum they're looking to adopt, what textbooks they're looking at, what enrichment their school is really excited about. So it's all of that conversation that comes into the meeting, and in that meeting, it's SPED, it's enrollment, it's ELL, we're making sure that we're in compliance, but we're also meeting the needs of that school. And every school can have different priorities, but they're all discussed at that meeting. And then that's what drives their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent to call up her team for an enrollment update.
Thanks, Christine. So we'll invite Denise Snyder, who's our deputy superintendent, and Liz Young, enrollment manager, who are going to give us an update and a presentation on enrollment. We want to make sure that we all get the big picture of what's happened. This has been an incredibly busy team. If you ever have a chance to go up to the 4th floor on Essex Street, we have an enormous amount of busyness happening almost every day, especially on Thursdays. Lines are out to the doors, and this team works really hard in overtime every single week to make sure that our families, when they arrived, they feel welcome, they feel supported, they are enrolled right away, they get all the information that they need to start school with our students. So please.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an enrollment update. And I certainly want to also acknowledge Liz Young as the enrollment manager and someone who works tirelessly on the ground with her team to make sure that all of our kids are in school and ready to start as quickly as we can get them in the door from the time we see them. So tonight's report really unfolds over 10 years. And I did that so that you could see how our numbers have changed over time to give you a much fuller, richer story. So when we look at this first one, and I apologize, it all seemed big on my screen and doesn't anymore, but you all have copies. Excellent. What you're going to see very clearly is that there has been a very steady, very consistent upward tick in enrollment. There was one slight dip in 2015. When I look at the numbers, I see that as primarily around 9th grade that year and around kindergarten. I can't really speak to kindergarten. I can speak a little bit to 9th grade around expansion of Notre Dame and some other attractions to some of the other private school options. So just bear with me with that. But as I said, steady increase, and last year's enrollment was 11 students different than the year before. So basically a negligible change. It's a steady steady process for the last 2 years. I opted, when I looked at how to tell you this story best, it first made sense to say, hey, let me give you change for every single school. That quickly became a non-starter because over 10 years we have done a lot to reconfigure our schools, and I would be giving you apples to oranges. A school that used to be elementary became a middle, another school became an early ed, so some of them disappeared as other ones open. So I did the next possible thing, and I grouped our enrollment by neighborhood. But please know that in your papers, you can also still see school-by-school data, okay? So as we look at the story that it tells, we'll start in Prospect Hill. That's home to Partham Elementary, Partham Middle, and the Rollins Pre-K and K School. You will see at the top of each of these slides the increase or change for students. Over 10 years, we picked up an additional 236 students for Lawrence Public Schools. That is in addition to the fact that Community Day Charter opened a new school in that location in 2012, adding 400 new seats. I should say over time. They're just finishing that expansion, but the reality is 400 new seats have been picked up in that neighborhood in addition to what we have picked up. Also noting that because it's a charter, they enroll citywide, but our data usually tells us that a lot of the families come from the neighborhood because proximity and ease of access is important. So if we move around the city, we will next go to Arlington neighborhood, home to the Arlington Middle School, Community Day Academy, and the Tarbox School. And here, over 10 years, we've picked up an additional 295 students. I would add the Tarbox. Some might say, oh, is that really Arlington or not? The Tarbox feeds the Arlington Middle School, so I thought it was important to make sure that, it was included in this particular snapshot. You'll also, just for record, as I said before, if you look at each of the tables, you'll see that I've included schools who have either historically been there and gone away or have been added over time, just so you have the full set of numbers. So our next stop is the center of the city, with a whopping 542 students added over 10 years, which, not to overspeak or overemphasize, that's basically an entire school building. And in the center of the city, this is home to Lawler Early Education Center, the LAE School, Up Leonard, Oliver Partnership School, and Up Oliver. I do want to note that SES, School for Exceptional Studies, is also located in this neighborhood, but they're a citywide school. Their numbers are included in the overall enrollment tallies, but not in the neighborhood breakdowns. From here on our tour, we go to Tower Hill. Tower Hill is home to the Bruce School, Lawrence Family Public Academy, Gilmet Elementary, Gilmet Middle, and the Hennessy. Here we've also picked up over 10 years, 181 students. And again, this is in addition to the fact that the Lawrence Family Day Charter School, over this period of time, since 2014 through to 2020, has been adding a new cohort to a new strand to every grade level. So if they had 3 strands, they're moving to 4. So that's an additional 20 seats over years, which is roughly, it is 140 new seats in addition to the 181 students that we have added to our enrollment totals. And finally, around the city, we land in South Lawrence, and that is home to the Breen Early Education School, South Lawrence East, Spark Academy, the Weatherby School, Frost Elementary, and Frost Middle. And here, too, we've picked up what is, in essence, another entire, relatively small, but entire school, 413 students. This, too, is in addition to the fact that Community Day Charter has also added a school in this neighborhood that is also adding 400 seats, or has added most of the 400 seats, and they, too, are doing pretty well enrollment-wise. So last but not least, we can look at our high schools. We can squint at our high schools and see that here too we've added over 10 years 373 students. Just for notice, the high school campus on the left side includes numbers for Abbott, includes numbers for International, and for all of the various configurations over time that took place as we redesigned the high school. And then on the right, you will see the High School Learning Center, which is located here in this building, and Phoenix Academy Lawrence, which was added in 2012, but as you know, this current school year became their own charter school. So some of the students who they have maintained or will draw will not be included in these numbers going forward. So what does this mean? There's another way to look at this data, which is size of cohorts. So on this slide, you're able to see that the 2008 cohort versus the 2018 cohort size, and see that every single grade also saw growth, with the exception of 9th grade. And again, from the information I can research, I can attribute what I can find to expansion in Notre Dame, some expansion at the Voc, and interest in the private and parochial school options in the city. And a lot of that, it's been very interesting. I can't speak to it, but a lot of this was around 2015, as we saw, and then some up and down for the next couple of years. And I think probably that's part of just redesign and the waiting for the dust to settle. So from here, I want to be able to show you some current year information. Where does all this lead to? What are we doing this year? In this slide, this looks just like the first one I started with, except that I have added this year, 2018-19 enrollment data, which is added in the darker blue box and also added to the graph. I did it separately because all of our data to this point has been from October 1 numbers, the numbers that we file with DESE. We aren't there yet in early September, and as I wrote this report last week. So what I did for this year's numbers was take where we are in time and then literally added up every registration appointment between now and October 1st and how many students they were registering, and added them to the graph. That will not include people who walk in, and it will not include people who call yesterday, today, tomorrow looking for an appointment to register. So those numbers are still subject to change, but in all transparency, it also doesn't include anyone who calls us to withdraw either. So that is probably as fair an estimate. And again, sort of another notice that we're on track for a similar year as last year and the year before, which are very, very busy years. What does this mean? So one of the things we have to do when we're busy and reaching capacity in our schools is at some point we have to say, there are enough, if not too many, students in our classrooms. And so we set caps on class size, and when a cap is reached, we close that grade in that school. And what happens for families who register after that point is that we assign them to the next closest school that has available seats. As you'll see in 2015, you can see the schools and the grades we had to close by the end of August. And I should note that our registration stays very busy right up through the first Thursday after Labor Day. That continues to be pretty busy for us. 2016 continued to have an even bigger surge with a lot more classrooms closed. 2017 and 18 look better, but they're not better. They look better because we increased classroom sizes and caps. So if a classroom had 22, it went to 25. If it had 25, it went to 27. If it had 27, it went to 29. That has its own consequences, but it is the way that we were able to honor more families' abilities to stay in their schools. And it's also because we recognized that even trying to move them to the next closest school was going to have the same problem. So I do want to say it's not all doom and gloom. We do have some challenges and responses. And again, you know the challenges. The challenges are that, a lot of our educators feel the stress of having classrooms that are too large. And our parents feel it in the sense that, are their kids getting as much attention as they should? Also, the discomfort of being assigned to another school other than your neighborhood school, especially if you've recently moved there and you're like, that's my school right over there, and we say, I'm sorry, it's not. And then finally, we have a process called variances here, which allow people to transfer under very specific conditions. And a lot of folks can qualify, but we don't have room for them to allow them. So even though they qualify, we have to also tell them no. What we're doing to support that so far is traditionally we will look at schools and classrooms that have increased caps, and we will bring in additional paraprofessionals. That does not make fewer bodies in a classroom, but it does bring more proportionally the opportunity for better staff-student ratios. So we do that. The other thing we do is that if a family comes with multiple students, we may override the cap, which adds to one problem, but it keeps our families together. It is absolutely horrendous to say you're going to go bring one child to school here and another here and yet another there. So we do keep them together. We also have looked at supply and demand adjustments. What can we do to ease the pain? So we have shifted some boundaries in our neighborhoods to help make sure that if one school has a little more room, we shift a boundary a little bit. So right at the edge, we might push a few more people legitimately and in advance notification into their new neighborhood school. We did that in 2015-16 with Up Oliver and Up Leonard when there was a huge disproportionate number, and Up Leonard was very crowded, and we shift those boundaries. 2017-18, we did that with Weatherby, where the Weatherby would fill up in like July before we even saw a bunch of people. We shifted those boundaries so that everyone filled up a little closer to the same time. We moved some kindergarten boundaries because we took kindergarten out of the LAE, and as you'll see a little bit later, that allowed us to bring back an additional strand of fourth, an additional strand of fifth grade. So we had to shift some boundaries to decide who could go to the Lawler and who would go to the Rollins based on where they live. And then finally, again, to continue to push, because the one place we were finding we had some seats were around the edges of the city, at least until recently. So again, we moved a few boundaries to get a few more families closest to the Partham to belong to the Partham neighborhood, as opposed to piling on at Oliver Partnership or Up Leonard. And then finally, this past year, we added an additional classroom, grade 3 at the Weatherby, grade 2 at Oliver Partnership School. And that has helped to ease some of the burden. So these are short-term solutions. They are certainly helping. As we look ahead, you've probably all heard good news too, right? That the Oliver Partnership School, we're in the middle of an MSBA ability to renovate or rebuild that school. And that's been approved, but we're in a schematic phase. Good news is it's going to double our capacity. Bad news, it's 3 years away. The LAE Elementary School, similarly, we're actually still in that approval process. I want to make sure people know that that's not a done deal. So far, so good, and we can thank a lot of the operations team over at the other end of the room for making that reality, but we're still in that approval pipeline in the eligibility phase. Again, great news. What we're asking for is to double that capacity. But that, too, is at least 6 years away, right? So we've got some capacity issues now, a solution down the road, and some space in the middle that we're going to have to put our heads together on. So when we talk about that, what's happening now that we have to put our heads together on, it's the reality that, we do have increased enrollment, and it isn't changing. The good news around Oliver Partnership School in LAE also creates the challenge of if we renovate those buildings, we will need to relocate those students. And also I added natural disaster hurricane relief. That might sound like a far-fetched thing, but maybe not with the Carolinas having an issue this week. And the reality that we saw 148 students last year from Puerto Rico. Of those 148, 85 of them are still with us. And that's post-FEMA ending their support. So basically, we've seen half of them stay with us. So these are real considerations, as well as something we've discussed before, which is, this unknown variable of how many students will surface as a result of some wonderful investments in housing development, but it still leaves us with the question of how many will land with us. Union Crossing opened at the end of 2016, and we saw 46 of those families, or 46 students from those families living there are new to us. Not moved, but new to us. On the other hand, the next development, which finished in June, we have yet to have anyone enroll from there. So, which ones are high-end, which ones are studio apartments, which ones are 2 and 3 units, we don't have access yet to that information to have a better understanding. But I wanted to present to you, these are the projects we know are in the pipeline. And we have to think about what would we do if some or many come to us in the next 18 months from this. And then finally, I turn this into a visual graphic for you. This gives you an idea of where those addresses are. So all the red houses are new developments that I have presented to school committee in the past. The blue ones are ones that we learned about this summer, so I added them to the map and just wanted you to have that. And again, you can see where they're located and what grades are closed currently around those. Not that that matters right this second, but it's just a matter of, where are we in time, and the reality that we do have closing classrooms and a lot of development and excitement potentially happening. All of that is to say, it's been a great, if not crazy, enrollment season. And we're anxious basically to spend the next couple of months putting our heads together on some new proposals and recommendations for you to come back in the winter and suggest how we might move forward as, as our short-term plan between now and our beautiful new buildings down the road.
Denise, thank you. That was incredibly illuminating. Really appreciate the detail in that presentation. I'd open it up to my colleagues for questions.
John? Denise, I was looking at the neighborhoods earlier today.
Yeah.
And the Rollins School.
Yeah.
I believe the seats available in the Rollins School are more than 190. That school originally was an elementary school, and if I remember correctly, there probably was somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 students in that building when it was a K-5, I believe, or K-6. Could the Rollins become a pre-K to 2, similar to what the Hennessy is in the Tower Hill area?
I will totally take that under advisement. We are taking recommendations, and we can do some numbers. I think everything's going to have to be on the table. I think one of the things we have to bear in mind, and it still may play out well, is that we do have afternoon and morning pre-Ks as a way to make sure we have enough available seats. So we wouldn't be able to tinker with that number, but I think everything is worth taking into consideration. So thanks for the recommendation.
And I have one more.
Right.
The General Donovan School, I know it's been given to an agency, but if we as a school system were to ask to take that school back, I was the administrator in that building way back when, and I housed about 250 kids in that building. So that would probably alleviate some of the pressure in the Arlington neighborhood.
Beautiful, thank you. All of this would be wonderful for us to examine, take a little closer look under the hood.
And then one more.
Yeah, please.
Behind the LAE School is the Holy Trinity Complex. I don't know what has happened to that, whether a developer has purchased that. Chris is shaking his head, yes.
It's the Da Vinci Child Health Center or something.
I'm sorry?
It's called the Da Vinci Preschool Center or something like that.
Da Vinci Preschool Center, she's saying is
It's a
taking
preschool
up
now.
Okay,
that
so it's
space.
already been spoken for. Okay.
But keep them coming. If you wake up in the middle of the night and have more, send me an
Oh,
email, call me.
Probably. I think that's it for now. Thank you, John.
Other questions?
I do have two questions. This one is more practicality. So if you go back to the, sorry, grades closed by end of August. So, sorry. So for example, I'm looking at Francis LAE School. So it says that for year 2018. So you reached the cap for third grade and fourth grade now in 2018. So if those same students continue in 2019, that means that you already have the cap for fourth grade. Is that correct?
Correct. Right now, we're not allowing students into third or fourth grade at the LAE right now. Correct.
And next year, if those third grader continue, you won't be able to do it for the fourth grader.
Exactly. Now, in theory, there's a lot of transitions that happen and mobility in the community, so I couldn't guarantee it, but you can see historically it's been a challenge. So there is some reasonable expectation that that would be the case again.
And then the other question that I have, does changing the cap affect the, does have any effect on the unions, on the teachers' union contract?
I am going to defer to someone who's more union contract knowledgeable than I am, but I believe that what we do around paraprofessionals meets that obligation. But I wouldn't want to say more without having more information.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for this report. I think, as John says, this gives us a lot of insight into what's happening at the level of enrollment throughout the city. In thinking about other possibilities in the future, has the school department taken any consideration or given any consideration to any of the parochial schools that were closed in the city for perhaps for extensions, and that are probably readily available, that don't need a lot of work to be able to be used?
Certainly. So I know one of those schools, St. Mary's, we brought as a recommendation 2 years ago to school committee, and there was some discussion, and then it kind of died on the vine. But in all fairness, it turned out to be a pretty good way that it played out, because we ended up needing to put our Rollins students there when there was the fire. So we were very lucky, if you will, that it was available. But yes, it remains ever present in the back of our heads as an option for some of these, challenges.
Yeah, because those buildings will probably go empty for some, except for certain community activities. Yeah. And we're looking at St. Mary's, St. Augustine's, and I don't know, I'm not quite sure about Sacred Heart.
St. Augustine's is where we have our LFPA, pre-K through K program.
Oh, okay, so that's good.
I didn't realize that was
We are making use of that. All right.
Yeah, thank you, though. No, St. Mary's is ever popular with us.
Other questions?
John, could you tell me what the average enrollment is? I know it's difficult right now in kindergarten.
I wish I had my laptop with me, but I'm gonna, it's 1,000-ish, give or take 100 or so. If I could be I shouldn't speak.
So at some point, maybe at a later date,
Yep.
could we have the average enrollments at each grade?
You bet. I can definitely give you that.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments and questions. I think just maybe first off, even though I know it poses incredible challenges to figure out how to, sort of educate kids and housing class sizes, the fact that the district enrollment has been growing, I think is a positive sign. I mean, I see a lot of communities across the Commonwealth where that's not the case. So it's a challenge, but I think it's a good challenge, that
Correct.
we have. And just a couple of questions where I know, especially looking at the development slide, which is really helpful to see sort of what's in progress and so forth, is there any current projection or, group that would be working on projections and as they affect facilities planning that, we either need to be a part of or better linked into? Because it just strikes me that obviously there's so much uncertainty, but the more we can get ahead of this and have a facilities plan that matches that, and they may already exist, so apologies if I just don't know it, but just curious, sort of where is that thinking and work, and sort of where does that live?
So we use a couple of things. One, we use our own data over time, such as this. The other is that the MSBA does projections, and we use those. And the third is we actually, Jessica Andors isn't here tonight to take credit for this, but we partnered, as we often do, on numerous things with them this summer to utilize one of their graduate student interns who was able to do a lot of mapping for us, and that also helped feed some of this data. So I'm excited by that, because mapping software and even knowledge is scarce and expensive. So we're lucky to have that this summer to get some of the maps that would help inform and will help us inform the projections that we come back with.
Other questions? Denise, you may not be the right person to ask on this, and that's fine. Let me know and I can follow up outside the meeting. And my other preface would just be, I don't have a math brain, so you're gonna have to help me. But, so 9th grade is the only grade level that doesn't grow over the 10-year span, right?
It saw some growth at one point, but it's just, it retracts and grows and retracts, but the 2015 is when it took its biggest dip.
And so I'm curious, is there a reason for that? Like maybe a reason that just is sort of normal to enroll? Is that more kids moving to the Voc Tech and
Well, that's what we
private
were
or
putting,
something like
right,
that,
we were putting our heads together, and again, 2014 or 15, we believe, is around the time that Notre Dame did an expansion, right? So you were able to draw, and it started with 9th grade and then built up, so that would siphon off. And I can't say whether or not it absolutely was more classes or not, but the Voc also expanded, but I'm not sure if it was classrooms or, specialty space, but again, increased interest. And just a general interest in, some of the private and parochial options that we have in the neighborhood, and why that may or may not have changed. Again, I can't speak wholly, but I will say that, we've been doing a high school redesign for a while, and it's a great redesign, but it also leaves people with till the dust settles, let's see what happens. Like maybe they don't want to risk it until that dust settles.
Yeah.
But
But there just seems to be something generally, but there's other options out there.
yes,
So then next, when I look at the size of the K-12 cohorts with the 10-year view,
yep,
I look at like 10th grade, so in 2008-9, it was 825. It goes to 988 for 2017-18. And then when I look on the high schools, and I go to 10th grade, it's 882. And then I guess if we added the SP, which is that special needs, or what is that?
so those, it's often special needs, but it's the people in sort of, 13th year program.
Gotcha.
So you would add that, you'd add, you'd look across to, again, the special programs, and then you'd have to factor in anything from Phoenix Academy and the High School Learning Center into those numbers.
So it's the alternative
Yep, exactly. So it would be all the programs.
pieces, okay. Great. Again, I really appreciate the depth of this, and it really paints the picture really clearly. Thank you, and I know just walking into the school department and seeing the families trying to register, and we know that's not necessarily the ideal optic, but what I see are you and your team out there on the street,
Literally.
like working and trying to help shepherd everybody through tough, hot days, and we appreciate the good work of you and your team.
Yeah, no, the team was fabulous, but thank you so much for crediting them.
And for the record, you offered me a water and I didn't take it.
Thank you.
thought it could be better used
did,
by
I
a
will tell
family.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last
Oh,
question,
sorry,
Mr.
can we do one
Chairman.
more? Julio, I apologize.
No, it's fine. Going back to the decline in grade ninth, could that also be attributed to school choice? Could we be losing some students at the end of the 8th grade going out of the district?
Sure, I mean, I think so, but I'm also sort of, I think it still begs the question of why one particular year, if you go back to the very first slide, that big dip around 2015 is mostly that 9th grade and kindergarten, and so why that one year, and that kind of leads me back to Notre Dame and some of the other expansions. But yes, I think that, people look around as their kids are in 8th grade and think about what are their options. There are certainly plenty of scholarships available to attend some of the areas, private and parochial, and certainly they make it attractive too.
And we don't keep data that tells us.
Only public schools. We wouldn't actually have a private school
If they
enrollment
went to
data.
private school. It'd be interesting to
Certainly would.
figure that out, and I know it would be a lot more work for you, but maybe we can get a little bit more
Yeah.
in-depth information on that particular year.
Yeah, we can certainly see if folks want to partner with us a little bit to share.
All right,
Thank you so much.
John?
Uh,
Just one more question, Denise. It just dawned on me that 10-year period, I don't remember the actual dates, but would the loss of accreditation, the high school accreditation, impact that 9th grade enrollment?
I don't know when
Jim,
it
I don't know
happened
what the years
either.
were.
Anyone? Okay, so it's before the
okay.
10-year.
Thank you,
Before
Miriam.
the 10-year. Thank you for that. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. At this time, item 9 on the agenda, and I just point out to the board members, they have before them the minutes of 2 prior meetings. These were also sent to you in advance, and I would entertain a motion at this time to adopt the minutes of the June 13th meeting, both executive and regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the June 13th meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain. Since I wasn't present at that meeting, that's my reason for
Thank you.
abstaining.
The motion passes. We have 4 in favor of adopting the minutes on June 13th. We have 1 abstaining and 2 non-voting. I would accept a motion at this time for adoption of the minutes from the June 27th regular meeting. Do I have
So
a
moved.
motion for that? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? We have 5 in favor adopting the minutes from the June 27th meeting. We have no active committee updates at this time, and so I will move to the end of the agenda. Is there anything any board members wish to bring up at this time before we adjourn? Superintendent, would you like to have a closing word before we adjourn?
I neglected to say about Carla and this new superintendent induction program. This is a program that I'll be participating in for 2 years, 3 years. Oh, yeah. Okay, she says 3. Okay. And so I'll give you a little flavor of what that's been so far. We've met twice. I'm in the middle of drafting and redrafting my entry plan, which of course includes my listening tour. I've met with Carla a handful of times, including last week, where she came along with me to schools as we were learning more about, actually we were in this building, and that's been very helpful. So the goal here is for me to have a cohort of other colleagues. There are 42 other additional new superintendents in Massachusetts this year, which is a record. And this group includes the superintendent from Haverhill, which is also considered, not only our neighboring district, but an urban community. I'll also be attending meetings in the urban superintendent cohort, so I've got 2 good cohorts of support and thought partners to think through some of the challenges of the superintendency, is particular in the first year, so I forgot to mention that earlier.
That's terrific, and we are glad you're participating in that. And I just know from discussions at the time when we approved the contract, and we're very glad to be hiring you, that you know, there was a robust agreement around making sure that any and all of these programs you want to participate in would be available to you. And we are really glad you're doing that, and also networking with the other principals. 42. All
Yeah,
42.
it's a great support, so I really appreciate the board approving that. And, you know, roles like this, as you know, are very challenging, and so the more thoughtful partners that you have to run through things, then the better for everyone, right? So.
Great. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge that LTU President Frank McLaughlin is here, and it's always great to see Frank, and we appreciate the great work of all of his members as we went back to school. And I don't know, Frank, if you want to make a comment before we adjourn.
I just want to say hello, and we had our first union meeting today. We're off to a really good start. I spent yesterday morning with Cynthia over at the OPS school, and it was a real good experience. I told her that, and I've been the union president for a long time, but usually the staff is waiting for the superintendent to leave. You know, they're all looking around the corner. But yesterday they wanted her to stay. So that speaks loudly. You know, we've been challenged by some things. We're definitely challenged by the heat. We're challenged by our growing population. And we're challenged by just the challenge of the city of Lawrence. And I know that the teachers are willing to work together. We want to move forward. You know, we're in a better place than we were a few years ago. And I just want to thank you all for allowing me to say a couple of things. Okay, best of luck.
Frank, thank you, and we appreciate your leadership and the great work of all your members. And I think we all take great pride in the relationship between the superintendent, management, and labor in this district. It's always focused on the kids and the families, and we appreciate your leadership on that.
Thank you so much.
At this time, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we are adjourned. Thank you.